Matt, hashtag we got a point. Hey Dustin, hashtag we got a point.
Holy man, do we suck in overtime.
I mean, yeah, we were killing a penalty in overtime, which is hard to do. 4-on-3 is a very open
horrible
ice
call,
kind of thing.
though.
But I mean, what was that call?
After everything they let go in the third period, like, yes, it was interference, whatever, but he's kind of standing his ground. Like, the Montreal player skated into him. And after everything they were letting go in the third, they call that with 35 seconds left. It's really frustrating in a tie game. And it's even more frustrating when it's a French official.
Yeah. I mean,
like, and then they show him at the end of the game there smiling and shaking hands with like the Suzuki and the Canadiens and stuff. It's like gross.
Yeah.
Bothers you.
I mean, like, I think it was like, didn't Sherwood get like punched right in the face just like a couple times and there was no call?
Yeah, there was a few brutal no calls against the Canucks, and yeah, they did give us a couple of power plays and whatever, but still there were some moments where they could have called many more, and then they decide again. So this is where I get the issue with controlling games and refs deciding when or when they're not going to call penalties, and it's just the inconsistency starts to get frustrating, and it always seems to lead to something like this. But also the Canucks kind of did this to themselves. They get out to their 3-1 lead and then they start sitting back and lo and behold, they take a couple bad penalties and it costs them the game.
Is this kind of a system issue? Because this seems to be the issue because the Canucks get up by a couple goals and then they just sit back and they stop trying. And then Montreal completely takes over the game. And it was pretty much all Montreal from that point. Even the fact that the Canucks were able to tie this game was a bit surprising. But once again, are we starting to have a conversation about Mr. Tocchet and his system?
Yeah, we have to. I mean, the overtime record, the number of leads given up lately, 3-goal leads, 2-goal leads, it's not good. You can't have that happening, and there's only so much your goalie can do when you're giving up odd man rush after odd man rush, and we're not pushing the play back. The first half of that game, when we started to get up 3-1, I mean, that was the most exciting we've seen the Canucks play in a long time. And then as soon as Montreal got that one back to make it 3-2, we just fell back on our heels and started looking just like we had looked against Nashville, just kind of sitting back, not really driving the play. Yeah, we're hitting guys, but they're not really like board crunching hits or anything like that. Like, they're not rattling the boards at all. Struggled mightily in the face-off dot tonight. So, not having possession off the drop is always a big issue. Just little things. It's always the little things that seem to get this team this year, and we just can't seem to get out of our own way.
Yeah, the Canucks only won 41.3% of the face-off. Montreal bringing in almost 60%, right? Like 58.7%. And then power play wise too, right? Montreal scores on 2 of their power plays, 2 out of 4. The Canucks do get a power play goal, only 1 for 3. And then you mentioned the hits too. Vancouver Canucks with 35 hits. So once again, getting about 10 hits per period. But like you said, at the end of the day, if you're not crunching someone, you're not separating man from the puck, then really you're just injuring yourself for no reason.
Yeah, and I'm curious, has anyone in the media or anyone like who interviews Tocchet asked him why he is so against calling a timeout?
Well, I mean, technically, if he had called the timeout, he wouldn't have been able to challenge a goal that was clearly a goal in overtime. So maybe that's it.
Well, no, I think they changed that. Like, you
I
get
just,
one free timeout in a game. Like, it's one free timeout. It's written in the rules. You get
yeah.
one 30-second timeout anytime in the game. It does not cost you anything. So I have no idea why in the hell he refuses to call them ever. Like, ever. We see all sorts of teams call them, late in the game. They call timeout to set up their play, rest their top guys. Or if the play starts getting away from them and they start to panic, like we see away coaches call timeouts and that sort of thing. It's just It literally never happens, and I don't understand why.
Yeah. I mean, the only time we've seen him do it was when he doesn't even do it when they pull the goalie, does he? Like, I don't even think we've seen
Nope.
him do it for that.
No, like he relies on TV timeouts to get in his conversations with his guys, and then he relies heavily on the players to do it themselves. But sometimes when you see the team floundering a little bit, like after the 3-2 goal, I would have maybe called it, or the 3-3 goal, called a timeout and got the guys back settled down. But yeah, I don't know. It's just something he's very against, and don't understand it. And also, there's certain structures to our offense that when we start sitting back, we don't really generate anything. We have that slow entry to the zone, or we got the dump and chase, and then we get lucky to have a power play late because Caulfield has a little snap show. But without his little hissy fit, we probably lose this game in regulation.
Yeah. Nick Suzuki continuing to dominate against the Canucks. He got a goal and assist in tonight's game. Actually, he got 2 assists and a goal. And he got assisting on Kirby Dock's goal in the third period, also assisting on the first goal of the game that Cole Caulfield scored, and then scoring the game winner in overtime. Nick Suzuki, is he related to David Suzuki, or is that just in my head?
I think all the Suzukis are related deep down.
I mean, Suzuki, like even with the stats that you want, but you don't really need, he leads all offensive categories against the Canucks as the current Montreal Canadiens. And obviously, they only play about twice a year, but obviously, a guy who loves playing the Vancouver Canucks. Another case of one of those guys, maybe put him on the list of like a Toffoli or a Hayduke or something like that.
Yeah, sometimes you just get that luck bug against certain teams, and you just have your best nights against that logo on the other side, and then it's just becomes kind of a confidence thing and the superstition thing. And so the further you go in your career, the more success you have against a specific team, the better you feel every time you play against them. And it goes the other way too. Some guys just play awful against certain teams, and it's the same. It's really hard to get that out of your head. So probably just a case of well, and also Suzuki's starting to have one of those breakout years. He's really started to show his abilities as a player this season and as of late. So just a good hockey player all around.
JT Miller got 2 goals and an assist tonight. Looked like he was feeling himself. Is this a case of just a guy who's ended up getting a little bit of rest, or is this a guy you think maybe with Quinn Hughes back in the lineup, does Quinn Hughes kind of even him out a little bit?
I think it's a little bit of everything. It's a shame that on his breakout night we couldn't play better defensively. And I think that's where Petey is missing. I think we don't realize how much he brings to the defensive structure of this team, and how much he helps out on the penalty kill and blocking shots, and also drawing penalties for this team. And so if we can have Miller doing this and get our Petey back, who was starting to show good signs before Christmas, I mean, this team's well on its way to winning games again. It's just there's little holes that seem to keep happening every time we get a different injury. There's a different little hole to fill, and we just keep um, constantly having to battle that adversity. And one of these days, we will be fully healthy. I hope.
I saw a thread on Reddit today, and it was like, "Oh, have we had any games? How many games this year have we had where the Canucks entire core has played together?" And they meant Demko, Besser, blah blah blah, Miller, Pedersen, Hughes, and everyone's like quickly like, "No, we literally have not had like it hasn't happened yet, right? Because Demko was injured to start. By the time Demko was backing up, that was when Hronek ends up getting hurt. So the Canucks have not had their team together so far. And you don't obviously want to make excuses because it happens, but everyone's looking at, oh, Colorado is so hot right now. What changed? Their players are back and healthy, right? That's the difference. And until the Canucks have the team that they signed in the offseason playing all together, you cannot fully judge this team for what they've done so far this year. And so far, they've looked like a team that are missing some of the key parts of their team, right? Like they're holding their head above water. What are they up to, 9 loser points now or something like that in the standings? But at least they're digging in and getting those points, because you can talk about them losing that point because you don't get the 2 points in the game. But you have to also talk about the fact that they're actually just hanging on for dear life, hanging on to the last wild card spot. That's got to be something they can hang their hats on, right?
Well, for sure. And it's easy to dump on them as fans and easy to dump on the season that they've had, given the success that they had last year. But that was last year. We didn't have as many injuries. Everyone was healthy. You look at the man games lost last year compared to this year, and over a full season, I think we maybe lost a quarter of the man games that we've lost already this season, barely halfway through. So when you compare the two side by side, um, it's apples and oranges. You can't just say, "Oh, this team should be doing this because these are certain players." You have to look at the whole picture, and the whole picture has not been put together yet since we dropped the puck in October.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw it too, right? Like the Canucks without Quinn Hughes are a different team. It is what it is. Quinn Hughes is one of probably the best player in the NHL right now. So you take that out of the lineup, and obviously you're not going to have the same structure. Not to bring more doom and gloom onto this post-game show, but we did say that we're going to talk about the Abby Canucks on their Eastern Coast road swing against the Laval Rocket. Game one, they pulled the Vancouver Canucks. Game two, different story, but can you tell us a little bit about those two games they played last weekend in Quebec?
Yeah, so they dropped back-to-back games to Laval. They had the first game was just a close game, a bit of a goalie battle. Went to overtime, and Laval ended up coming out on top with the 2-1 victory in that one. So that was just a really close game, a good battle. And then in the next game, a little bit of a different story. That one was kind of all Laval. The Canucks couldn't really find an answer for their offense in that one, and ended up losing 6-2 in the second one. So they've now amassed 6 straight losses, which is a stark contrast to the 4-game winning streak they were on prior to the Christmas break. The team's struggling to find their offense, which kind of coincides with what's going on up with the big club. When you have players constantly coming in and out of the lineup, and you're having to shuffle your lines because of injury fills with guys going up to the Vancouver team, you constantly have guys playing with different players. Also, you're usually missing your difference makers or your better players when there's holes to fill up with the big club. So, you got Phil DiGiuseppe and Max Sasson playing with the Vancouver Canucks right now, and those are two big two-way forwards that are huge difference makers down in Abbotsford. They're a bit older guys that have more responsible of a game. So we're kind of seeing the effects of the injuries up in the big club is now having its domino effect kind of with the lower club. We were seeing a lot of good things with their structure and that right before Christmas, but then coming out of the break, they're struggling a little bit to find some consistency. Game one, Atu Ratu did get on the score sheet, so he was able to find one after going a few games without getting any points. And then also then in the 6-2 game, we had I think Tristan Nielsen got on the board with a nice pass from Jonathan Lekermacki. And then we had Ty Mueller getting the other goal off a nice tip from an Elias Pettersson, sorry,
You're pulling at
DPD.
me.
Yeah, shot from the point. um, Overall, the games were pretty balanced in shots and hits and sort of thing like that. Canucks had their chances with some power plays and things early, but then unfortunately weren't able to capitalize. And Laval was just too much for them on this first part of their Eastern trip.
Yeah, I mean, and probably extra difficult for an AHL team to suddenly be on the East Coast, because that is something that they don't do on a very regular basis. So I imagine for them, it's an even bigger shock to the system if you're suddenly playing in Quebec.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of Lecker getting that assist, gets called up based on the injury to Dakota Joshua, ends up getting a goal and an assist though. That's got to make him feel good.
Yeah, looked very good, and like we had said, after that first period, right back on that top line when he came out in the second period, and of course made a big difference. That one shift, 2 goals in 20 seconds, the assist on the Miller goal, and then getting his own off a nice feed from Besser off the outlet from Miller in their own zone.
When you see a performance from Lecker like that, you got to think that that means the Canucks will probably look at maybe keeping him up instead of one of the other guys moving forward.
Possibly. Uh, the issue is if you have to move him down the lineup, can he handle the defensive responsibilities of a third or a fourth line when you're going up against probably top guys, especially on the road? So that is the question there. From this game, it looks like he's grown a bit more responsibly in the defensive end. He's learning the things that they've asked him to do down in Abbotsford. So I would expect him to get into the next game, um, unless PD draws back in. But it will depend on how the coaches felt he did overall. I felt he definitely deserves another game up with the big club. Go and see where it goes from there.
See, I almost think that you might see Sasson come out of the lineup just because he has been playing at center. So if you do get Pettersson back in the lineup, that does add another center to the line. And you're looking at Dakota Joshua being out with him being a winger. So you might see him, you never know, right? Because the Canucks have done that a little bit this year, making sure that all their guys are kind of getting a chance. And even though Sasson's been looking really, really good, Lecker does bring that offensive touch that I think he's got a bit of an advantage on Sasson with.
Yeah, exactly.
JT Miller finishing the game with 4 points. I was actually wrong. He had 2 goals and 2 assists. I had him at 2 goals, 1 assist. Big game for the boy. Got to be a good start to the road trip for him. Even getting maybe the lineup back together with PD, maybe starting on Wednesday against Washington. Maybe you look at keeping Lecker in the top 6 and then moving one of the other guys down. That might be like maybe even Garland ends up on the third line or something like that.
Yeah, possibly. We'll see. He gives you some options. Could maybe even see Lecker playing with the Brusque and Petey, and then you get Suter back up with Bess and Miller. You get all sorts of options as these guys start to get healthy and get back in the lineup. Because they were able to survive for so long. If we do get healthy, then we have so many more options, and we will just have to see what this team can really do when we have our full lineup available to us.
Yeah. Going to be a long road trip. We got Washington on Wednesday at a 4:30 game. Then we got Carolina at 4 o'clock on Friday. A back-to-back Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday, 4 o'clock as well. And then you got Winnipeg on the 14th. So they've lost in overtime to start. So they're 0-1. They got 4 more games against some pretty good teams coming up here. Obviously not a weak team there. Montreal is probably the weakest team on this road trip, but obviously they are now, I think they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. What if you were to have this road trip, and what record would you be satisfied with? Are you looking at maybe like 2-1 if they could pull that off? Do you think that's even reasonable?
Yeah, you're probably hoping for a 500 trip. Because it's so questionable with the injuries right now, who's going to be available to you. However, it does look like they're going to get constant reinforcements along this trip. PD looks like he's real close to coming back, and it sounds like Demko did practice for about 20 minutes yesterday, I believe. Or maybe this morning, I can't remember. So it sounds like he's not too far off with his back spasms. So as each game goes on, hopefully we get a few guys back into the lineup, and maybe we can win more than we lose on this road trip. Who knows? With this team this year, we don't know until we know what the lineup is, to be honest.
Because with Dakota going on IR, that means it's a minimum of 3 games, right? So he'd be looking at the earliest he would play again would be Saturday against Toronto if he was ready to go at that point.
Yes.
Oh, chaos. It's always chaos here, isn't it? Things used to be so easy. The Canucks were so good last year. They didn't have any injuries and all that. And then this year has just been anarchy and chaos every single game, seems like.
What a year to start doing this sort of stuff, eh?
I thought it was a good idea. They lose to the team that makes it to the Stanley Cup Finals and only by a goal there. So you thought maybe it was a good idea. But that is what it is to be a Canucks fan and deal with their Canucks logic, right?
Absolutely. In true Todd Bertuzzi fashion, it is what it is.
Yeah. We're going to see you on Wednesday for the first intermission, Dustin.
Yes, sir. I should be there. I will let you know if anything comes up.
Cool. Any last words for chat before I let you go?
Tough one tonight, guys, but let's look to bounce back on Wednesday against the Caps, and hopefully we get Petey back and maybe even Demko, and things will be brighter on the other side of all these injuries, I promise.
Cool. Thanks again for the 10 gifted subs, sir. Have a great night.
Cheers.
Nothing is perfect.